For two officers, another traffic stop felt like routine. Another chance to flex power, intimidate, and make an example of a black man behind the wheel. They spotted him in a sharpshoot, calm, steady, hand steady on the wheel, and assumed he was just another target. Just another man they could trap with planted drugs and barked orders. What they didn't see was a weight beneath his shirt, a badge earned from 20 years of dismantling cartels. When the cuff snapped shut and an evidence bag swung in the air, their confidence grew. They thought they'd scored an easy victory. But the man in their custody was no victim. Their so-called routine stop had already sealed their downfall. Before we continue, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The sun was dipping low over the Atlanta suburbs, painting long shadows across perfect lawns and clean streets. Behind the wheel, Marcus Reed tapped his fingers lightly in time with a saxophone drifting from his car speakers. The familiar swing of Take 5 was his way of easing the stress after a day of intense DEA briefings downtown. On the passenger seat sat his perfectly pressed gray overcoat, a habit after 2 decades of service. Beneath his shirt, against his chest, rested the badge that defined his career. Cool metal, heavy with history. For a moment, Marcus's thoughts drifted toward dinner. Then, flashing red and blue light snapped him back. He checked his speedometer. 62 and a 60. Barely over. His jaw tightened as he guided the black sedan to the curb, leaves crunching under his tires. 2 officers emerged. One tall, one younger. The taller, Lawson, banged on Marcus's window harder than necessary. Marcus lowered it with calm precision. License and registration. Lawson's voice was sharp, cold. His partner, Briggs, hovered back, hand near his holster. "Good afternoon, officers," Marcus replied evenly. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" "You were swerving. Been drinking?" Lawson shot back. "No, sir. Not a drop. My driving was steady." "That's not what I saw." Lawson snatched his ID, inspecting it with exaggerated pauses. Then, "Step out of the car." "Officer, I don't believe that." "I said step out." His voice cracked with hostility. Marcus breathed slow. Training reminded him, stay calm, comply, survive. He spoke clearly. "I'm going to exit slowly." The saxophone continued in the background, oddly peaceful as tension mounted. Hands on the hood, legs spread. Lawson's voice carried the weight of arrogance. Marcus complied, palms against the cool metal, the autumn breeze tugging at his tie. Across the street, a woman walking her dog stopped, lifted her phone. A witness. That mattered. "My partner's going to check your car," Lawson announced while patting him down roughly. "I do not consent to a search." Lawson laughed, a dry, mocking sound. "Consent? That's cute. We've got probable cause." Inside the car, Briggs rummaged nervously, glove box slamming, papers rustling, briefcase moved. Marcus tried to speak. "Officer, I'm a federal." "Shut it." Lawson pressed harder between his shoulders. Marcus felt the cold weight of handcuffs being drawn. His mind raced. Reveal himself now or wait. Too soon, and they'd bury the evidence. Too late, and things could spiral out of control. When picked up, leaves swirled across the pavement. More cars slowed, drivers filming, some pulling over. 3 phones recording, maybe more. "Derek," Briggs finally called, voice shaky. "You better see this." Lawson turned slightly. "What have you got?" Briggs emerged pale-faced, holding something Marcus couldn't yet see. Lawson's smirk widened. From his hand dangled a plastic evidence bag, white powder catching sunlight. He lifted it high for the growing audience. Well, looks like we've got ourselves a dealer." Marcus's stomach sank. He knew his car was spotless. He checked every morning without fail. "That's not mine," Marcus said firmly. "And you know it." Lawson twirled the bag like a trophy. "Nice try. Guys like you always say that." His words dripped prejudice. "Cuff him," Lawson barked. Briggs moved forward, cuffs trembling in his hands. He locked Marcus's wrists too tight. "Easy, son," Marcus said calmly. "You don't need to cut circulation." Briggs hesitated, sweat gathering on his forehead. Lawson snapped. Ignore him. Tighter. By now, traffic had slowed to a crawl. At least 6 phones were aimed at the scene. A businessman whispered urgently into his phone. Teenagers watched from bikes, wide-eyed. You have the right to remain silent. Lawson recited the Miranda rights with smug delight, spinning Marcus to face the crowd. Marcus stood steady, eyes scanning details like a seasoned agent. The way Lawson's badge glinted, the faint drizzle beginning to fall, the position of the sun. Everything mattered. Everything was evidence. You know, Marcus finally said, voice steady, calm, unshaken. There are cameras everywhere these days. And with those words, the trap the officers thought they had laid was already beginning to close. The longer the phones kept recording, the less control Lawson had over the story. His hand clamped tighter on Marcus's arm, fingers digging into muscle. Is that a threat? He hissed. Marcus's reply was even, unshaken. Just an observation. Keep running your mouth, Lawson growled. See how far that gets you a booking. Beside them, Briggs moved stiffly to open the back door of the cruiser. His steps were hesitant, his jaw tight. The rookie's conscience was written all over his face. He knew something was wrong, but didn't have the backbone to say it. Marcus felt the familiar weight of his badge pressing against his chest under the shirt. The reveal was coming. But timing mattered. He needed these men to show their true selves. Needed the witnesses to see everything. Start walking. Lawson barked, shoving him forward for the crowd's benefit. The handcuffs bit into Marcus's wrists as he stumbled, catching himself. Careful, Officer Lawson, Marcus said calmly. Wouldn't want to tack on excessive force to the growing list. List of problems. Lawson laughed sharply. The only problem here is you thinking you can talk your way out of this. We caught you dirty. They reached the patrol car. Briggs hovered by the open door, shifting awkwardly, sweat already visible at his hairline. Marcus turned his head slightly, his calm eyes locking on Lawson's. Last chance, officer. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Lawson sneered. Do what? Arrest a drug dealer? Yeah, I'm sure. Marcus's gaze shifted to the younger officer. His voice dropped to a measured tone. Tommy, he said softly, using the rookie's first name. Pay attention to what happens next. You might learn something important. Lawson's face darkened. That's it. Get in the car. But Marcus straightened his posture, raised his voice to the gathering crowd. Before I do, there's something you should all see. He shifted his shoulders just enough, cuffs straining, to pull his shirt aside. The badge gleamed against his chest. Special Agent Marcus Reed. DEA. His tone was steady, unshaken. And you two just made the worst mistake of your careers. The effect was instant. Lawson's hand slackened, color draining from his face. Briggs actually stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the curb, his mouth hanging open. I didn't, Lawson stammered, his voice stripped of its earlier authority. The silence in the crowd was heavy. Phones still pointed forward, recording every twitch of fear on the officers' faces. A breeze rattled the branches overhead, scattering leaves like confetti. Now, Marcus said, his voice calm but carrying steel. Somebody should remove these cuffs. We've got a lot to discuss. Lawson fumbled with the keys, his hands clumsy, twice nearly dropping them before finally clicking the cuffs open. Marcus rubbed his wrist slowly, the red marks playing against the skin. Sir, Lawson tried, sweat dripping from his temple despite the cool air. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Marcus cut in, his tone measured but sharp. You conducted an illegal search. You planted evidence. You profiled me because of my skin color. And you did it in front of multiple cameras. Lawson's eyes darted nervously toward the crowd. Briggs looked close to vomiting, his lips trembling as though he wanted to speak but couldn't. Listen, Lawson tried weakly. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, Marcus replied. DEA protocol is very clear. Any federal agent witnessing corruption reports it. Immediately. He pulled out his phone deliberately, making sure the cameras caught the movement. Briggsy's panic spilled over. He fumbled with his radio, pressing it hard against his mouth. Dispatch, this is Officer Briggs. We need Lieutenant Denton on site. Code 3. What's the situation? The dispatcher asked. Briggs swallowed. Tell him it's urgent. A misunderstanding. Marcus raised an eyebrow at that word, but let it hang. The witnesses had already seen enough. The crowd buzzed now, some people shouting, others jeering at the officers. Phones were held higher. Lawson raised his voice desperately. Folks, please step back. Police matter here. Oh, it's a police matter all right, Marcus said evenly. One for internal affairs, the DEA, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Just then, the growl of an approaching engine cut through the noise. A sleek black SUV rolled to the curb, tinted windows reflecting the flashing lights. The door opened, and Lieutenant Carl Denton stepped out. Stocky frame, pressed uniform, hair graying at the temples. He moved with the practiced ease of a man used to pulling strings. Afternoon, gentlemen, Denton said smoothly, his southern drawl warm but edged. His eyes scanned the scene. The crowd with phones, his officers looking broken, and Marcus standing tall with quiet authority. He extended a hand. Lieutenant Denton, I hear there's been a little mix-up. Marcus shook it firmly, noting the strength in the grip and the cold calculation behind the smile. Special Agent Marcus Reed, DA, no mix-up, Lieutenant. Your men planted cocaine in my vehicle. Illegal search. Dozens of witnesses. All recorded. Denton's smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened. That's quite the accusation. It's not an accusation, Marcus said, gesturing to the evidence bag still dangling from Lawson's hand. It's fact. The crowd murmured louder. Phones zoomed in. Denton's charm turned outward. Folks, I appreciate your concern, but please, this is sensitive. Clear the area. A few people drifted off, but most stayed firmly in place. Phone steady. Denton's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Turning back to Marcus, his voice dropped lower. Agent Reed, why don't we handle this somewhere private? My office isn't far. Here's fine, Marcus said. His tone was firm, carrying for the cameras. In front of witnesses. Denton's grin widened, but his words carried steel. Son, you're new to this jurisdiction. You don't understand how things work here. Sometimes it's best to let little mistakes go, for your own good. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Is that a threat, Lieutenant? Just advice, Denton replied smoothly. From one lawman to another, nobody wants careers ruined over a simple misunderstanding. Thunder rumbled overhead, the storm closing in. The air fell heavy, charged. Marcus's voice cut through the wind. Planting evidence isn't messy paperwork. It's not a misunderstanding. It's criminal. How many times have your men done this before? For the first time, Denton's mask cracked, his jaw tightening. That's dangerous speculation, Agent Reed, he said softly. And dangerous talk can make life very difficult for you. Marcus raised his phone, thumbs tapping deliberately. Then I suppose I'll just add attempted intimidation of a federal officer to the list. The storm had broken now. Rain began to fall, pattering on asphalt, dripping off uniforms. Denton stepped closer, voice lower, darker. You don't want this fight. Men who tried before you, they didn't last long. Know your place. The racial venom in the phrase hit Marcus like a spark on dry tinder, but he stood unshaken. My place, he said firmly, is upholding the law. All of it. And that includes rooting out corruption. The wind howled. Thunder cracked, and the street fell into a heavy silence. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one building between Marcus Reed and Lieutenant Denton. They say power protects itself. And in Clayton County, that protection came dressed in a lieutenant's uniform, with 25 years of polished medals and handshakes to prove it. Denton didn't need to raise his voice. His words carried enough weight. You think they'll believe you? He asked. A respected police lieutenant with decades of service, or the angry black agent making wild accusations. The threat wasn't subtle. It hung in the damp evening air between them, heavy as the storm clouds overhead. Marcus felt it. The years of corruption woven into the system, the weight of history pressing into that single challenge. But he didn't flinch. You're used to people folding, Marcus said, voice low but sharp. Used to them being afraid. But here's what you don't understand, Lieutenant. He leaned in just slightly, rain dripping from his hair, his tone steady as stone. I've spent my entire career dismantling operations run by men exactly like you, and I'm very, very good at my job. The rain fell harder, soaking through his wool coat, plastering his shirt to his skin. Neither man moved. Then Denton's mask cracked, revealing the cold steel underneath. "Get in your car and drive away," he said finally. "Forget this ever happened. Or don't. Your choice." His smile returned, thin and venomous. "But remember, you were warned." Marcus didn't answer. He toned, walked back to his car with measured steps. As he slid into the driver's seat, he caught sight of Lawson and Briggs in the rearview mirror, already huddled close to Denton, scheming, plotting their next move. The engine purred, but Marcus's jaw was clenched tight. They thought he'd back down, that he'd let them bury it, the way they had buried countless others. They thought wrong. At home, silence greeted him. Only the soft clink of ice against glass as he poured 2 fingers of bourbon in his office. Shadows lengthened across the walls. He watched the amber swirl in the lamplight, replaying every detail of the stop. That traffic stop hadn't been random. Lawson and Briggs moved too clean, too practiced. And Denton showing up right on cue? That wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. This was routine for them. Marcus sipped, letting the heat cut through the chill in his chest. His coat still hung damp by the door. In his mind, Denton's words echoed again. Boy, 20 years in law enforcement, and some things never change. His phone buzzed. The caller ID, James Chen. Friend, fellow DEA agent, someone he trusted. Marcus picked up. "Read." "Marcus, we need to talk." Chen's tone was tight, urgent. "Internal Affairs just got 3 complaints about you. Heavy-handed arrests. Even whispers of planting evidence." Marcus's hand tightened on the glass. "It's been 4 hours," he muttered. "You know how it works," Chen said. "Anonymous tips. Concerned citizens. All neat, all official. Marcus, what did you step in?" "Corrupt cops. Clayton County. Got caught planting drugs. Their lieutenant tried to strong-arm me into silence." Chen hesitated. "Let me guess. Carl Denton." Marcus sat up straighter. "You know him." "By reputation. He's wired in judges, politicians, maybe even feds. Word is his department has one of the highest drug arrest rates in the state. But the numbers don't make sense. Too many plea deals. Almost no trials." Marcus exhaled slowly, the pieces clicking together. "Because the evidence doesn't survive scrutiny. Because it's planted." "Exactly," Chen said. "And now they're setting you up. Complaints today, media leaks tomorrow. They'll try to destroy you before you expose them." Marcus stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the street was calm, almost serene. How many innocent lives have been destroyed under that calm surface? "They're efficient," he said. "I'll give them that. But they made a mistake coming after me." "What are you going to do?" Chen asked. "Fight back, but smart." Chen's voice dropped lower. "Be careful. Denton's not the kind of man who leaves loose ends." Marcus's eyes hardened. "I'm not the kind of man who does either." The laptop hummed to life. Fingers flying across the keys. Marcus dove into the databases only someone with DEA clearance could touch. Lawson, Briggs, arrest records, patterns, 3 years of stops, almost all young black men, almost all routine traffic violations, taillights, rolling stops, license checks, and always a discovery of small bags of narcotics, enough to ruin lives, not enough to trigger federal oversight. Marcus started building a spreadsheet, logging details, mapping clusters. Each arrest fit neatly into their script. Glove compartments, under seats, trunks. Too neat, too easy. He pulled court records next. Plea deal after plea deal. Public defenders overwhelmed, pushing clients to settle. And the few who resisted, evidence disappeared. Witnesses recanted. Cases collapsed. The bourbon sat forgotten as Marcus scrolled deeper. Asset forfeiture records lit up the screen. Cars, cash, property, all seized, funneling straight into Denton's department budget. This wasn't sloppy corruption. It was a business model. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Chen. 3 more complaints. Now they are saying you've taken kickbacks. Marcus's jaw locked. They were moving fast, but so was he. One name on the personnel file stood out. Officer Briggs. The rookie. The nervous one. Marcus remembered the way his hands had trembled with the cuffs. There might be a crack there. Morning came gray and heavy as Marcus walked up the courthouse steps. Navy suit, polished shoes, no overcoat today. He had work to do. In the basement archives, the air smelled of paper and dust. Mrs. Alvarez, the clerk, barely looked up until he slid his credentials across the desk. Her eyebrows lifted. I need every file involving Officers Lawson and Briggs. Start with the last 6 months. She hesitated, then nodded, leading him to a research room. Box after box arrived. Marcus worked methodically, scanning, logging, connecting dots. Patterns sharpened within an hour. Jerome Washington, 19. Michael Taylor, 22. David Brooks, 20. Minor violations. Drugs found in easy-to-plant spots. Mrs. Alvarez lingered, watching him. Finally, she set her glasses down, her voice barely above a whisper. There's something you should know. Marcus kept his face neutral. Go on. I've worked here 15 years. These reports, they're wrong. Dates on evidence forms don't match arrests. Language repeated across different cases. Copy and paste work. Marcus leaned forward. Have you reported this? I tried once. The next day, Lieutenant Denton stopped by my office. Mentioned my daughter's tuition. I understood the message. Marcus's chest tightened. How long has this been happening? Since Lawson transferred in. Arrest numbers spiked. Briggs came later. His young, out of his depth. Denton controls them both. She slid him a folder. These are copies of the irregularities I've kept. I was too afraid to speak up before. Marcus took it gently. You just did. Her hands trembled. Be careful. Denton has friends everywhere. Hours later, as Marcus climbed the courthouse steps back into the storm-dark sky, the folder under his arm felt heavier than lead. He had evidence now. Real patterns. Real irregularities. But he also had a target on his back. This wasn't just about 2 dirty cops. It was a machine, finely tuned, well-protected, and ruthless. And Marcus Reed had just declared war. Every file Marcus carried told the story of a ruined life. Not just numbers on a spreadsheet, but children stolen from their mothers, families broken apart, whole neighborhoods left scarred. The weight of it pressed on him as he pulled up to a modest brick house with neatly trimmed flower beds and a small American flag fluttering in the evening breeze. This was the home of Gloria Jackson. The screen door creaked before he could even knock. Gloria, a petite woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a face weathered by grief, opened the door. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled into a tight bun, her hands trembling as she clasped them together. Agent Reed, she said softly, but with dignity. Thank you for coming. The living room was immaculate. Family photographs covered every inch of the walls. Graduations, basketball trophies, honor roll certificates. A home built on discipline and pride. Gloria gestured to a worn armchair while she sat carefully on the couch. Tell me about Tyrone, Marcus said gently. Her fingers twisted nervously in her lap. My boy was never in trouble. Never. He worked 2 jobs, saving for college. The day they arrested him, he was on his way to a job interview at the bank. Her voice faltered, and tears filled her eyes. He wore his best suit, the one we bought for his graduation. Marcus nodded, listening, letting her speak. They said they found drugs in his car, but Tyrone never touched that poison. He swore he'd never be like his cousin Jerome. She dabbed at her cheeks with a tissue. They gave him 10 years. 10 years. Told him if he didn't take the plea, they'd make it 20. Marcus studied the photo on the mantel. Tyrone, a young man in a suit and tie, his smile bright with promise. Did anything about the arrest seem unusual? Marcus asked. Everything, Gloria said firmly. The officers, Lawson and Briggs, they didn't even give him a reason at first. Then they claimed his tail light was out, but that car was checked every week. Tyrone was careful. They tore it apart, made him sit on the curb in his good suit, and when they pulled out those drugs, they laughed. Marcus made notes, jaw clenched tight. Gloria rose, pulling a letter from a drawer. He writes every week. Stays strong. But his last letter, her voice cracked. He said guards warned him to stop filing appeals. Said they'd make things worse if he didn't stay quiet. Marcus read the letter, every word dripping with intimidation. Another threat. Another pattern. When he finally stood, Gloria touched his sleeve. Please, my boy is innocent. Don't let them bury him. From there, Marcus went house to house. Each story was different, but every detail rhymed with the last. At the Martinez home, Mrs. Martinez handed him coffee and spoke with quiet steel. Her son Carlos, a youth mentor, was accused of selling drugs to children, the very children he devoted his life to protecting. His college application still sat half-finished on the table. At the Williams house, a father's voice cracked as he described how his daughter Tracy, 17, on a roll, was stopped driving her brother home from practice. Only Tracy was arrested. The drugs? Conveniently found in her purse. At the Brown family's kitchen table, him still on their lips from Sunday service, they recalled their eldest son being hauled off in cuffs on his way to church. At the Robinson home, a daughter arrested on her way to work. And in the Chen household, Mrs. Chen poured tea, whispering through tears. Nobody believes us. The shame in our community is unbearable. My husband's heart gave out from the stress. He never recovered. Each living room was filled with evidence. School awards, work schedules, photos of smiling faces that told a different story than the official reports. The last visit was to the Thompsons, a cramped apartment above a corner store. Mrs. Thompson, a nurse who worked nights, stood weary but proud as a little girl colored quietly in the corner. Michael was all she had, she said. 6 months ago, they took him. 12 years. He took the plea because he didn't want her left alone. When Marcus stepped onto their porch, the sound of children playing in the street washed over him. Laughter, basketballs on cracked pavement, a mother's voice calling her kids inside for dinner. Normalcy in a neighborhood living under siege. They think they are untouchable, Marcus whispered to himself. Back in his car, he flipped through his notes. 12 families, 12 futures stolen. Each case a mirror image of the last. Routine stops, planted drugs, plea deals. But in every home, he had seen something else too. Something stronger than fear. Hope. These families still believed. They still kept their children's rooms ready, still saved newspaper clippings, still prayed for justice. They were waiting for someone to listen. Marcus drove downtown, parked outside a glass office tower. On the brass plate, John Johnson and Associates, civil rights litigation. Inside, the office buzzed with energy. Paralegals hustled. Phones rang. The walls plastered with headlines from past victories. Leah Johnson's office matched her reputation. A sharp navy suit, hair in neat twists, eyes sharp as glass. She stood, hand outstretched. Agent Reed, you have 15 minutes to convince me this isn't a waste of time. Marcus laid the files on her desk. 12 families. Same 2 officers. Same pattern. All planted evidence. Leah arched a brow. Police plant evidence all the time. Why are these cases special? Because I'm their latest target, Marcus said evenly. They tried to plant cocaine on me. Their lieutenant threatened me directly. They didn't know I was DEA. Now they are trying to bury me before I expose them. Leah studied him. And why come to me? Your reputation. The Thompson case. The Jenkins lawsuit. You don't back down. She smirked faintly. Flattery noted. But these cases are slow, expensive, and Denton has friends everywhere. Marcus opened his laptop, sliding it across a desk. Surveillance photos of Lawson and Briggs with known dealers. Bank records with unexplained deposits. Witness statements from clerks about missing evidence. Arrest patterns showing 92% young black men, most with no records. Leah leaned closer, skepticism melting into focus. The DEA does teach you to be thorough. I'm good at my job, Marcus said. These officers are destroying lives. They have to be stopped. Leah stood, pacing. If Denton has a connections, you say, this could get ugly. Your career, your reputation, maybe your life. Already at risk, Marcus replied. They've filed complaints. Next will be leaks. If I don't move first, they'll take me down. Leah picked up Tyrone's graduation photo. Her voice softened. You spoke to these families. All of them. Yesterday. They still believe. They do. Leah sighed, then squared her shoulders. If I take this case, I need everything. Every shred of evidence. No surprises. You'll have it all, Marcus said. Her eyes narrowed. Denton won't play fair. He'll come after you hard. Marcus gave a faint smile. I don't scare easy. You should. Leah shot back. Fear keeps you sharp. The fearless get sloppy. Marcus leaned in. Then called me cautiously determined. These families deserve justice. And Denton needs to learn he's not untouchable. Leah studied him for a long moment, then extended her hand. All right, Agent Reed. Let's go to war. Their handshake was more than agreement. It was a pact. And as midnight fell over her office,